My name is Andy Nimitz, and I was injured back in July 2023, motorcycle accident where a car came out in front of me and I did my Superman impression flying over the car, and it didn't land very well. I broke essentially my neck, but it was incomplete, thank God. But I was paralyzed after I landed. I remember landing on the pavement and I couldn't move. And I just was lying there and going, I can't move. And I'm going, do I want to live the rest of my life this way? And I just kept thinking, if this is the way it's gonna be, I don't know if I want to continue on, right? It was really hard. So just waiting for the ambulance to come, and they took me to the hospital, and then the next day they did the surgery on my neck where they fused my neck from C3 to C7 in my upper vertebrae. But the way my injury presented was that my arms were pretty much paralyzed and my hands, and at the time my legs as well. So initially I couldn't move at all. After my initial surgery and after they, cleared me, I was able to go down to TIR down in Houston. I had heard of them, my wife had heard of them, and they recommended for neurological issues. They're the best in the Texas area for that type of injury. So I went down there and they started my rehab training, where they got me sitting up eventually and then standing up, and then started to walk. But then I got an infection in my initial surgery. And they had to go back in, and I had to have 7 surgeries over 8 or 9 days to clean out the infection. And initially the doctor didn't think I was going to make it because it was too severe, the infection. Of course, they didn't tell me that at the time, but my poor wife had to sit through that, and they weren't sure I was going to make it. But luckily the surgeons down there at Herman Memorial were able to clean out the infection and get me well again so I can continue my therapy. So at TIR they started getting me up, getting me walking. Initially I could only move a few fingers on my left hand, and my right hand and arm were just pretty much static, just incapable of moving for at least the 2 months I was there. So I was at TIR for 2 months with my initial rehabilitation, getting me walking. But they, had me in a wheelchair. And when I first showed up here, we looked at a lot of different places. My wife did a lot of research about the best place to go for, spinal cord injuries. And Spero was recommended by TIR to her. And when she first showed up, instead of going into the facility here, she met a couple on their way out from doing therapy here, and she says, "So how are those guys? Are they good?" And they spoke very highly of the team here and what they had done for them. So my wife said, "Oh, okay." And then she went in and she saw that you had a lot of the same equipment that they had at TIR, and she was impressed with the quality of the staff and everything. So when I showed up, you might recall I was in a wheelchair. I could barely walk. And the first thing that they did was get me on that machine, that walker machine. I forget the name of it. I call it the baby bouncer because they put you in like a little sling, like you're bouncing like the babies do, right? And it supports you, and then you can, start walking. And I remember, okay, let's see if we could go a half a mile. Let's see if we could go a mile. And I just kept pushing it and getting to the point where I was able to walk without any kind of assistance. So I started in a wheelchair, and then I started to use the walker with my arms supported, walking around here with that thing. And when I wasn't here at Spero, I'd be walking around my house. I started walking around the house, and then walking outside on the patio, and then eventually out on the street, doing longer and longer, and then eventually walking with a belt on to keep me from falling over, right? And now I can pretty much walk and go anywhere without any trouble. And I attribute that to, the team here at Spero for helping me, get up on my feet, regain my balance. The next area was focusing is on my arms. And that's, I've come a long way. I still have a long way to go, but, I can scratch my nose, and I couldn't do that before. Couldn't feed myself before. Having the ability to do that, to drink champagne like at New Year's without a straw, those are all things that I think that Spero has helped me to do, and I continue to improve. In fact, I know you just did a reevaluation on me, and my range of motion is continuing to improve, and I attribute that to the team here that, has really helped me. So it's been good. It's been a good journey for me. Not one I wanted, but I'm very happy with the progress that I've made. So the other thing about it was that you have not only the facility here, but the one over at Ergo with the pool therapy. And when I got into the pool, that was really helpful for me because it took the weight off my limbs, in terms of being able, I didn't have to fight gravity to get range of motion. And the pool therapy, I think, was really helpful for me. That combined with the therapy that you guys do here is just incredible. The fact that I continue to make progress is what's important to me. I keep improving. But I do remember one time, I was working with Claire, who's great, by the way. And we were stretching, and it's like, okay. And she said, okay, reach up, and I could scratch my forehead, and I go, I can touch my forehead. That's great. Because before I could barely touch my chin or something like that. And the fact that I could, raise my hand up higher, was just kind of a revelation to me, and just shows me that, working with the team here, allows me to improve my reach and my functionality. Of course, and just eating, is one thing. I mean, if you can't feed yourself, it takes all the joy out of a meal. It really does, because you're like, first of all, you may not be ready, and I didn't want a bite of that. I wanted a bite of this, right? And but you're there, and you're just trying to get through it, right? But being able to feed yourself, or being able to lift a glass up and drink from a glass where you couldn't do that previously, those are special things that you remember, and makes a big difference in just the quality of your life. I was a very active guy. I'm a black belt in samurai sword fighting, right? I was in my motorcycle club riding, and I just was very active, and I just desperately wanted to get those things back. So I'm hopeful that eventually I'll be able to do that again. There are days, obviously, where you kind of feel, especially with the cold, you tighten up again, and you feel like you're not making any progress. But then you come here, you do a good workout, you feel relaxed, and your movement comes back, and you think, okay, I'm making progress. There's a lot of lifestyle changes that you have to deal with, when you have a spinal cord injury. And not only just from the physical side, but from the psychological, mental side of things as well. And your team is connected to doctors that help you, like the rehab doctor, Dr. Euclides, that was recommended to us by your team because we didn't know who to go to, But he's been great, and he helped me out with, Botox to kind of loosen up my muscles and things like that. And then also, dealing with issues of just lifestyle. You would bring in people like Langdon and Hez to talk to you about personal things, and how you kind of deal with day-to-day issues and stuff like that. And just being able to talk to people like that, I think really was helpful for me to kind of get used to some of the changes that I had to deal with in terms of my day-to-day life, So not only the physical therapy was there, but also the psychological counseling was there as well, that I think really helped a lot, and helps people kind of come to terms with, what they have to deal with in their changes in life. So that was helpful. You know what they say, PT, what is it, physical torture, and OT is occasional torture, right? And when I was in TIR, that's kind of how I viewed it, because it was painful, but I came here and they started working through those things. And now, I feel so much more positive when I leave, every time I come in. And I feel like, it's gonna come back. I'm gonna be the best I can be, because of the people and the knowledge that they have that just kind of help you, work through, the tough parts of it, you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the reasons I would highly recommend Spero for people that are really going through any kind of, neurological recovery, because your knowledge, your attitude, and your equipment, it's the best.